Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. You guys, Dr. Ann and I are here today, and we are going to be chatting about a topic that she brought to my attention that she definitely works through in a lot of her team calls with Team Becoming Her, something that she sees in her practice as well. And we're going to be chatting about how to hack your ADHD, working towards your health and fitness goals. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent. This is absolutely more of Anne's realm. So I'm here to learn too. I'm like really actually really interested in you guys. What I love about our podcast is they're not scripted. By no means is there any really any, like blueprint to these outside of we're just having a very open, honest conversation off the cuff. And so I'll probably have a lot of questions for you as well, Anne, because I think that this topic can absolutely be powerful for so many people. But
Yeah.
it's not, it's just not chatted about enough. So I'm going to let you kind of roll. You dive in first.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why I really wanted to talk about this is I've heard a number of people on my monthly calls as a part of this program ask me questions that were either in relationship to ADHD symptoms or we're struggling with like essentially procrastinating or getting bored in the process and that kind of stuff. And I know you and I have a different philosophy about boredom because you love boredom. I'm against boredom.
Mm.
And part of what I wanted to share was that I have ADHD as well. And it was actually diagnosed much later in life because I am a high functioning person. I'm really, really smart. I got school. I didn't have to study. I was really, really blessed that way. And all the things that I did in terms of my overachieving and overfunctioning were a manifestation of my hyperfocus and my ability to just keep going. And I just looked like a driven kid growing up. And so as an adult, when I was diagnosed, it made some sense, but I hated the medications. And now that I understand it a lot better, I wanted to share with everyone,
Mhm.
as well as our team, some of the things that I found, especially for women. This is for women, and I'm not no hate to you guys, and I'm sure that this will relate for some men. But I have seen a lot of women poorly diagnosed with ADHD because a lot of what exists in our DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manuals for psychologists and healthcare providers, actually was normed on the male population. And the reason for that is that when ADHD was originally diagnosed, little boys when they were in school, hyperactive, difficulty sitting down, they couldn't focus in class or getting poor grades. And so it created what's known as functional impairments. And because of those functional impairments, AKA they were the problem students, then they got diagnosed and they got additional support and help. Well, what happens oftentimes with little girls is that little girls, because they're not quite, because of it's testosterone, it's not about, girls are better than boys or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's just about different hormones and different ways that girls are socialized versus boys. So I'm not hating on anybody. But girls tend to be more people pleasing. And some of that is because of rejection sensitivity dysphoria. That is a common symptom that girls experience where it can look like or even sound like social phobia, but it's really just hyper focused about being rejected in any way, shape, or form. And because of that, little girls tend to be a little bit more people pleasing towards a
Mhm.
teacher, but also less problematic in a classroom. At most, what I hear a lot of girls talk about is either they were the chatty ones in the room, the teacher always had to say, be quiet. Um, at best, they were really quiet and very driven to overthinking. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the differences that I have seen. The first one is in hyperfocus. And if anything, this is why I love ADHD for myself, is the ability to hyperfocus. Um, so a lot of really smart women will hyper focus, but hyper focus towards achievements. And so one of the things that I did, and this sounds like a really weird flex, but I swear it isn't, is I wrote a 20-page term paper while in labor with my second child. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I wrote it overnight. I was done with it. I knew this
You guys
child
can't
was
see my
coming,
face
guys.
right now. Like if you're not watching the Zoom, I'm looking at Anne and I'm like trying to like connect those. I'm like, you did what? And she's just so casual about it. She's like, this isn't a flex. I'm like, no, that's it's kind of a flex.
No, the thing about it is though, is she was born 3 days late. I knew this child was coming. Clearly, I was swollen, I was big, I was uncomfortable, and I did not want to write the paper because I hate sitting down and writing papers. I've written so many papers, and so it took for me actually being in labor to produce enough anxiety and chaos in my life that I was then driven to complete it. And I did finish it. And fortunately, I had really good friends who turned it in for me because that was back when paper was all the rage and there was a lot of electronic submission. But I got it done, right? And so the other ways that it can come out is that women, and sometimes really driven people in general, can have a lot of hyperactivity that manifests in exercise. And
Mhm.
this isn't, there's a difference between compulsive exercise and hyperactivity with exercise. So hyperactivity with exercise are those people that genuinely don't like to sit down. These are the people that when we go on vacation, you want to go hike for 10 or 20 miles. Nicole's raising her hand.
That's me. I struggle.
You, well, and okay, so tell me more about that for you, because I want to hear your perspective on it, on that hyperactivity when you're on vacation.
Not even vacation, just in general. Like I'm the one that averages 18 to 20,000 steps a day, which is norm for me because I struggle to sit for too long. Like I can't do the thought of a road trip gives me anxiety. Anything over like 2 or 3 hours that I can't break it. I can't sit still long enough to be able to do that. So if I have to sit still for long periods of times, like I actually posted in our private community the other day, I'm like, I knew I had a day where my ass was in the chair and I had to like bang out things that I'd just been putting off, but I put it off for so long because I know it's going to take a commitment to like in the chair. So it's like I knock out 20,000 steps before, or 10,000 steps before I even sit down. And then I'll knock out another 5,000. I struggle to sit big time, not even on
Uh-huh.
vacation, just in general.
Uh-huh. And so some of that is in relationship to lower levels of dopamine that's in the ADHD brain. But the other thing that it is that the more that we can do that involves both sides of our bodies, because that helps with anything that stimulates both sides of the bodies, actually helps with nervous system regulation. And so bilateral stimulation, running, cycling, walking,
Mm,
anything manipulating both sides of the body actually brings our body back to homeostasis. So it's like we got too much energy. We got the energy surplus of human beings, and it comes out in staying active. And it's not a compulsion to stay active, because a compulsion to stay active is rather like I feel like I have to do it and I
mhm.
really don't want to do it. I want to sit down, but I can't, because if I don't, then I'm not going to burn calories and then I'm going to get fat, or if I don't work out, then something bad's going to happen to me. And a lot of people with ADHD actually say nothing bad's going to happen to me. I just feel better.
Mhm.
And what's funny that you're talking about is I sit for a living. That's what I
Yep.
do. And on the days that I sit, I have to work out, and I have to work out really, really hard in advance of my day. Same thing for road trips. My husband will plan around my bike rides. I'll do 20 miles out in the country, do it super violent and fast, and come back completely winded so that I can sit down for just a few hours, like if we're driving to Florida or something with our kids, so that I can tolerate being in the car.
Yep.
Now,
I feel that.
so that hyperactivity can show up that way. It can also show up just in the things that we do. Emotional dysregulation happens for women, and I also want to speak about this because how many of us as women have heard it must be that time of the month,
Month.
right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
and the problem with this is, so ADHD, they genuinely feel things a lot more deeply. Highs are high, lows are low, higher highs and lower lows. So they tend to be more passionate people, and more because of that emotion, that fear of social rejection. What happens then is that they tend to be hyper vigilant around other people. So they tend to look for cues in other people that they disapprove of them, or that they've done something wrong, because they fear that rejection. And that is something that lives inside of them. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to address that, but that is one of those ways that it will show up. Also with women, perfectionism will show up as a manifestation of ADHD. Nicole, you're shaking your head like you're relating to a lot of
I'm
these.
like, oh, I maybe find a lot more about myself than I didn't realize, guys. I'm being diagnosed on the podcast, so this is fun. This is real fun.
So perfectionism means that when someone with ADHD is rooted entirely in shame, and a lot of people with ADHD will talk about feeling different than other people. It took me decades of my life to find my group of friends that I just so desperately love. And ironically, they're other people very much like me, because everywhere else that I was with a group of people, I felt like I was the odd man out. Now, I think that some people will argue that ADHD is being diagnosed. It's the new pop, thing in psychology that's showing up all over the place. What I'd like to argue is that neurodivergence is probably underdiagnosed.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is, and this is just based upon the research and the reading that I have, is that I believe it's more a manifestation of the right hemisphere of the brain operating. So those people that tend to be more creative, more expressive, more passionate, the artist of us, right? But I would actually argue that I think more of those people are neurodivergent because of how the right hemisphere of the brain is actually activated when we're thinking through processes. Um, and so, because of that, if I'm around a lot of people and I believe that I'm the odd man out, AKA I'm driven by shame, now if I'm an overachiever, I'm going to use that shame in a perfectionistic mindset. So I'm going to try to do everything perfectly to avoid rejection from other people. I'm going to try to do everything perfectly because then I feel like I'm above reproach. The other thing that can happen is that girls can have, because of that rejection sensitivity, can have a lot of social challenges. So a lot of difficulty meeting people, a lot of difficulty with small talk. Very passionate people and highly empathic people tend to be really, really great with deep conversations. Do you know what's hard to do when you're first meeting people?
Connect, like a deeper conversation. And dude, I was just having this conversation because I'm like, why is it as an adult, I struggle to make friends, right? And it's because I was
Mm-hmm.
telling my husband this. I'm like, I don't do superficial well at all, outside of like, nice to meet you. How's the weather? Right? Like that very generic. It's like, I, I check out. My mind starts to wander. It's like, give me something to engage with. Like, give me something. And it's not even necessarily that I have to be super interested in the topic, right? But it's more like I need something that's just more than the super, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the fakeness that comes
Yes.
with that. And so this is so funny we're having this conversation, but that is me to a T, to a T.
Well, and what I think is really unique about this is that it also isn't about introversion versus extroversion, because a lot of ADHDers can be very extroverted when they feel comfortable when they're in their crowd of people, but
Yes.
when they're not in their crowd of people, other people that tend to be a little bit quirky, and a little bit more impulsive and spontaneous, when they're not in their crowd of people, they do feel like they stand out like a sore thumb, because they kind of do, right? Because our brain is working, like I call it like the computer monitor that has 40 tabs open at all times, right? I realize that there are tabs open and I'm kind of semi paying attention to them, but I'm only going to really focus on one or two. Ironically, I have 40, at
Tab.
least 40 tabs over it. It's like, please, I know my son tells me all the time, you got to close them down. It slows down your computer. And I'm like, I hear you. Um, the other thing that we struggle with are things like chronic boredom. Um, what I think is really, really cool and fascinating about the ADHD brain is that it's a brain wired for interest and not information. So this is where intelligence will not do an override for something that is just simply information to us. So when people talk about not wanting to work on their meal plan or record things or do a meal plan, I'm one of those people. It is because we get bored with the concept of having something already drawn out for us. We like the rush of the last minute. We love, because our brains are actually wired for that. We love experimenting with things and waiting until last minute to see if we can get it all to work. And because of that, there are certain techniques that we can actually engage with, and we're going to talk more about that as we talk farther in the podcast. But I wanted to address the chronic boredom. The boredom isn't because there's something wrong with them. It's simply because of the way that the brain is wired. It is wired for interest. This is
Mhm.
also why hyper focus becomes a thing, because the second you're interested in something, you're going to go full scale on it. And that's what, my husband and some of my daughters will talk about this. It's either all, or it's very much all or nothing. It's either I do it and I buy it, and like I bought kayaks and got all the things, and the special like little umbrella and that kind of, and I kayaked every weekend and multiple times during the week, and then I stopped kayaking. He's like, hey, those kayaks are in the garage, aren't you going to use them again? I'm like, eventually.
Not interested. Yeah.
It will circle back around, I promise. um, Difficulty routine is another symptom. Even when capable, they might find it hard to stick to routines, feeling overwhelmed with the monotony of a routine. So again, it moves into that boredom place. It's just not challenging enough. Sensitivity to criticism, that's part of that rejection sensitivity, but it also makes it difficult for them to receive feedback. So if a coach is giving them feedback and it sounds like a confrontation or it sounds like a criticism, they're really going to take it to heart and take it more to heart, even more so if they're highly perfectionistic, because they've
Mm.
worked so stinking hard to nail it for them then to a coach to find one thing that isn't working quite well, it really kind of destroys them. And then they feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't be trying at all.
This is
Um,
interesting, and it connects to the last podcast that we did when you got really vulnerable about, oh, this is really interesting.
uh-huh.
Oh, this is
Uh-huh.
also very interconnected here.
Yes,
You guys
it
haven't
is.
listened to that last podcast, I'd highly encourage you to go listen to the last one because that was really good too. But
We hinted at some of these things. Impulsivity and decisions. So these might be the ladies that when they hear this podcast or they research it and they hyper focus, they're like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then they do it and they're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? That you are my people.
people, I have found my people.
Um, and sometimes those impulsive decisions can be spot on because of our hyper focus, because of our passion, because of our heart. If we wait too long sometimes to make decisions, ironically, we overthink it and we'll work our way out of things, and we'll actually work our way out of movement when we do that. So sometimes that impulsivity can actually be a great thing. It's not always an Amazon Prime thing where we're shopping too much or spending too much or doom scrolling too much. And the last one, and I think I mentioned this repeatedly, is the overthinking. And one of the things that I see happen very, very frequently with women who are diagnosed with ADHD is that they sometimes are diagnosed with anxiety first. And it's because of the ruminating thoughts. They tend to chew about things a lot. And some of this is because of difficulties with procrastination, because they get really overwhelmed starting a project. This is one of the reasons I love coaching for ADHDers. It's one of the reasons why I have a coach, and I'll probably be married to a coach the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form, because I need someone else that has better executive functioning skills than I do. When it comes to my life, I can be that person for other people because it's interesting to me, because I'm helping someone. But when it comes to my own life, and I'm a personal trainer, but I have a personal trainer, right? Nicole, you and I have talked about this often, because I need someone else to stop long enough to create a routine for me that I can live by.
And I also
Go
want to
ahead.
stop and just normalize this too, because this is actually a really powerful conversation. I know I'm kind of squirreling here in my ADHD, maybe I'm squirreling, but I think there's so much power. I was actually just having a conversation with somebody who is thinking about joining our team, and she's been following me for a couple of years now, and she's like, what has stopped me is like, why can't I just do this on my own? And there's so much guilt and shame wrapped around. I should be, she's a nurse. She's like,
Yes.
she's extremely intelligent, right? Like, this has nothing to do with intelligence. This has nothing to do with capability, but there's that disconnect there for her, right? And she's shame, and there's so much shame and guilt wrapped around the fact that she can't do this on her own. She's tried multiple times, and for lack of better words, has failed. She can't stay adherent. She can't stay consistent. And, so she finally, we're working through that right now. But I just think there's so much power to recognizing that, just like what Anne said, I will probably be married to a coach for the better half of the rest of my life for these very reasons. It's not because Anne isn't extremely capable, or whoever's listening to this isn't extremely capable.
Uh-huh.
There's just so much power when you, just like Anne said, you have somebody else that lays the guideline and the plan, right? And let's be honest, when it's your own journey, like, and I can coach people through these things very capably, very well. But when it's your own journey and you're wrapped up in your own, right, there's so much emotion that's tied to your own journey that's really hard to pull yourself out of, right? Like, it's really hard to recognize when you're emotionally attached to that. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think there's a lot of power to that piece of it.
Yes. And we're going to talk more about that. And I think that was a beautiful segue for me addressing some of the fixes, because I want to get to
Mm.
the good part, which is how we address this. So some of the fixes are having a coach or someone else with executive functioning skill sets that supersede yours.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is that um, one of the things that we have to do in creating new routines is break down barriers and walls to creating those new routines. And so if one of the barriers, and I talk about this all the time, one of the ways that we manage binging or overeating in the patients that I serve is, if one of the barriers is you have the food in your house, get rid of that food. It's like, you're not going to die without it. Your kids are going to survive without Oreos or ice cream for a little bit. We'll get back to it, but we've got to break down some of these barriers. And if the barrier is, I know what to do, or let's say we think we know what to do, but we don't have a solid direction, and we want to follow five different social media influencers that are all
Mm-hmm.
fitness experts who all say something slightly different and all have a slightly different routine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get really overwhelmed and we get burned out because we do it too hard. And this is the ADHD queen here, right? Like, we're going to work it 1,000,000%. And if we don't see the results really fast, we're going to get really discouraged. And then we're going to unwork it 1,000,001%. We're going to go backwards on purpose because we're angry at ourselves, angry that this system didn't work, angry that no matter what I do, it won't work, right? I can't change anything. And we've got to be smarter than our weakest link, even inside of us. In other words, if you have any barrier, one of my barriers was even doing marketing, right? And I just recently hired a virtual assistant to do marketing for me, even though I bought a package for marketing because I'm smart enough to do it. I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those barriers. I'd rather pay someone than let them, like, the money's gone. Pay someone, because then at least I have someone holding me accountable. Then at least I have someone else that's actually the driving force behind this. There's so many ADHD coaches out there. There's so many fitness coaches. Being able to find something and go in that single direction with accountability, with, again, that direction
Mm-hmm.
piece, and someone who's holding your hand and creating a system for you, game changer.
Game
Absolutely
changer.
game changer.
Yep.
The second biggest game changer, and I live by this, I didn't realize how obnoxious it was until one of my boys said recently, "Mom, you're really competitive." But let me share with this. You make a game out of everything. All right. And here's the fun part. I really do like winning. However, I like the game better. So it doesn't matter if my husband and I are leaving the church in two separate vehicles. I will go the opposite direction and see if I can take enough shortcuts to arrive before he arrives. That is the goal.
Oh my
Now,
gosh, so funny.
that man often beats me. I don't know how. He also has more speeding tickets than me, but I digress. Um, but we've got to make it a game. And because the ADHD brain is wired for interest and not information, one of the ways that we can milk it is by challenging ourselves. I remember a coach saying, one of my coaches previously had said, "And it looks like you're trying to play Tetris with your meal plan." And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Because it's kind of fun."
It's like, yeah, yeah. The macro
It's
Tetris game we all play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun seeing what I can fit in. It's fun realizing I have a little bit extra in the evenings. I actually really enjoy doing it. And it's not a bad thing for me, because when I plan out a whole day or a whole week, and again, I do meal plan, but what I do is I give myself permission to tweak it. So if one day I decide that I don't want what's on that day, I will pick another day in the future that I haven't yet made. And that works really well for me, because then it keeps things interesting. It keeps
Mhm.
things not quite as stable. Um, the same thing, actually, and I hope my coach doesn't listen to this, but this, Nicole, don't you dare tell her. The same thing I will
Let me
do in
tell
my
the whole world, but
workouts.
don't you dare tell her.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure she listens
Don't
to these
listen to
podcasts.
this. One of the things that I will do is I will lump together different exercises in my routine to see if I can get them done shortly faster. I'm always racing an invisible clock. It doesn't matter if I have 5 hours in the afternoon, and I do take breaks, so I do give myself rest. It doesn't matter if I have 5 hours in the afternoon. I try to squeeze it in and try to figure out how I can milk different muscle groups in the same moment, because I like that high intensity.
So you're
Now,
trying to milk the time, not I'm curious. You're trying to milk the time, not necessarily the weight. So is
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
the
So
game is
if
to
it
get it
says
done quicker, but
If
not
it's yeah, so if it says I have like a 90-second break, I'll wait like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And let's say I have push-ups that's a part of, like, I've just did legs, and then I
oh,
have
I
push-ups
gotcha.
that's like later on in my routine. I'll drop and do a whole bunch of push-ups and see if I can make it before the time runs out on the timer.
Got it. Okay, I see what
Um,
you're saying now. Okay, I gotcha. I
so
got
it's not horrible. It's not bad.
it.
My coach may have words with me. Um, but it's one of the ways, and I do this, and I think I should share this in another podcast. When I go swimming, I was a former competitive swimmer. I will race everyone in the pool. It doesn't matter what shape you're in. It doesn't matter where you started. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the pool. I will race you. If I think you're going really slow, I'll see if I can get 2 laps in the 1 lap. Like, I will do anything, and I fail often, but it's because it's a game. So anything that we can do to make this process interesting for us, even if it's a matter of making it a game to see whether or not you can nail your meal plan and your macros, and assigning some reward to it. So a reward
Can I
could be
just
some.
interject though? Because I do that with my laundry. Is that weird? My door, if I keep my laundry door open, it beeps. Like, I don't know. I need to time it's every 30 or 45 seconds. So I see how many things I can get laid out or folded in between
Yes,
those. I do that
yes,
with I don't do it with my training, but I do it with my laundry. This is pretty funny.
yes.
Like
See,
little things
there
you
you
don't
go.
even realize you're doing until you're like, oh, I'm like, I was totally doing that yesterday. I got like three laid out because I'm OCD, like with my laundry, there can't be wrinkles, there can't be things have to be folded right. My husband folds
Wow.
backwards. It drives me absolutely crazy. Like I cringe just thinking about it. So I'm like super OCD with it. So I'm like, oh, I got three shirts laid out this time. And I'm like, in this next whatever time span, I'm going to shoot for four kind of thing.
Yes.
But yeah,
So
that's funny.
very similar process. I
Mhm.
will do the same thing in the morning when I'm getting prepped and ready. I will try to see how much of like the dishwasher I can unload before my coffee is done running in the
Yep.
in
Or
the
how much
little
you can get
express
done while you're
machine.
cooking your breakfast. It's like, can I get this whole one thing unloaded while I'm cooking my breakfast? All right. All right. I'm here for
Yes, yes. So, for those of you listening, ADHD, one of the symptoms that we can have is that we can be phenomenal multitaskers, but we can forget an awful lot. We
it.
can forget a lot in the process of this. So, anything that we can do to actually create a game will make it by far more interesting. I always consider GPS the time to beat. I live by that. Again, I don't have a lot of speeding tickets, thank the Lord. But it's always about making something a game because it's interesting. It's also one of the reasons why a lot of ADHDers tend to be late to stuff and have a lot of time blindness is because I like to call it chronic optimism. We believe that we can get more done in the 5 minutes before we leave than most human beings on the planet can do in an hour. But we're going to try. And so we wind up showing up late to places because we underestimate the time that we have for what it is that we're trying to get into it. Um, I don't have really fun tricks with that. Usually, the best way of managing those is to actually count backwards and figure out how much time it's going to take from you from the starting place, and then figure out what time you want to leave. That I consider really boring though, so I don't tend to do that very often. So create a game. Try to do things that are interesting. One of the most this is the third step. One of the most fun things that I do, and my kids really don't appreciate this, but I think it's hysterical. My teenagers, I am so sorry. They're going to listen to this podcast as adults and be like, and this is why I'm in therapy. All right. So, one of the things that I do is I try to break apart recipes and find ways to make them slightly healthier.
Oh,
So, I
I
have, yeah,
macrofy everything, dude. Everything gets macrofied. Like everything. You know, I have macrofied fish and chips to like, we have like, I do my homemade tartar sauce. Oh my God. It's like I've been having this weird, like anything that I get a craving for, I macrofy everything.
so again, it goes to the game. It is not people with eating disorders can also do this. So I want to say that as just a
Yeah.
warning. However, the difference is it's something that's kind of playful. What we're really looking for is something that brings us joy when we're doing it. So it's not a part of I'm not going to eat this because for sure I eat lots of things that are not macro friendly that I haven't created, and I love foods that I haven't created. I love it when somebody cooks for me. However, when I'm home, I try to see what it is that I can do to add in a little bit more protein and tweak things to make them both yummy and higher in protein and lower in fat. Now, my kids have been traumatized by this because now they'll ask me before they eat any of my Ninja Creamies, Mom, does this have cottage cheese in it? Or when they have my banana bread, Mom, is this the healthy banana bread? Now, mind you, they're asking me because they don't know the difference. I consider that a win.
That is a win. That is a win. Jace does that too. Does this have protein in it? I'm like, yes, it has protein in it. Eat it. And I do it because I just want more, right? Like I'm like, I could buy this in the box or whatever, and I'm going to get a very little, like I'm going to get a very small serving, or I can make it myself and get double, sometimes even triple the amount of food for the same macros. Like that
Oh,
is
yeah.
like my game for me. It's like, what, how much more volume? Like how much more bang can I get for my buck?
Yes, yes. And one of the cool aspects of that is that in doing that, you can actually help your entire family have
Yep.
a better balanced diet, more protein in their diet, more fiber, more fruits and vegetables, right? And that is another trick that I get is also trying to stick in. I feel like I have toddlers. I just have teenage boys and a teenage daughter that are anti veggies, but I try to stick in veggies in meals. And they also now ask me about that. Mom, what did you hide in this? And I'm like, just try it. Just try it. And they're like, tell me first. I'm just try it. We'll talk later.
And it's like, can you even identify that's anything's even hidden in there? That was the question, right? Like you probably can't even identify it. So,
That's
but
right.
yes.
That's right. Um, the fourth thing I want to mention is cultivating routine. And this one is really, really, really tricky because a lot of what we have to do in cultivating routine are teeny tiny little baby steps. So the very first time that one of my coaches, I've had a few coaches now, but one of my coaches mentioned to me to record things in my Fitness Pal. I had an eating disorder, and I remember my Fitness Pal, and it was not my friend. And I was a calorie junkie and could count calories to the nth degree, and did so very obsessively and very compulsively. And so when this was recommended to me, I thought, I'm not doing that. That's really eating disordered. I'm not going to go down that pipeline. And as we went along, what I realized is that I needed some ability to track information, very much like a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So, those of us with ADHD, if you are spenders, this may preach to you. I may be preaching to you, may not. Um, but what can happen is that we see kind of like in our mind this mega amount, paycheck or a total number of calories for the day. And we're like, that's plenty of calories. I can have this latte and this muffin at Starbucks, or these egg bites at Starbucks and this latte. And then for lunch, I can have this because I have this big total amount. Well, I'll tell you something honest about me is that I can spend on Amazon exactly like that. Well, I have money in my bank account, and that's only like $20. That's only $30. And what I realized in a part of this journey is that I needed a better method for tracking and just simply giving me data for feedback. And so when I was able to eliminate any emotional kind of reactivity to going over or under or not quite hitting what I needed to hit, and it wasn't a failure of myself, what happened is it was just like tracking money in a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
It was really basic information, just simply data. And it wasn't about who I was. It was never about a failure. It was just, oh yeah, I didn't plan that well. Or, I planned that pretty well today. Go me. And it worked out really well. And the end goal is actually to get to a space where you're intuitively eating, not just where your eyes can see what the amounts are that you need, but your stomach also is hungry for it. Like it fills up to a certain level, and you know what that feels like in your belly, not overly full, not underly full. And that is kind of a science when you have not grown accustomed to that. When you have lived, like many of us, in this diet crazed world, and we have yo-yo dieted, or we've done other things, or we've just been binging or overeating for years, we don't know how to tell our tummy when enough is enough. But if I have it on paper and I understand on paper this is what it needs to be, and then I get to see it in front of me, then tracking makes sense. But we got to start small. So even if you just simply track breakfast, or you put in a breakfast that you have, I don't know if you've got ADHD, I have the same breakfast every day for the last 9 months. I mean, it's just until I get bored, and then I'll have another breakfast for the next 9 months.
Yep. I'm the same
How I
way.
do things.
I'm the
Uh,
exact same way.
it's fabulous, right? Um, but you may just start first with tracking breakfast, and then at the end of the day, figure out what you're doing. But then as you get better and as you get more attuned to it, it's simply just tracking in the moment. It will take you 30 seconds. You are done. Your data's in. Very much like recording receipts. If you look at QuickBooks or something like that, where you're having to log receipts to manage expenses, it's the same exact phenomenon.
Yep.
But we have to be able to start small, and we have to be able to give ourselves some permission to not be perfect on it and not hyper focus on it.
Yep. And I love to look at this too because my brain looks at it because I get met with this often with the tracking thing because it's a hurdle for a lot of people. Even those who haven't struggled with an eating disorder, it feels overwhelming, it feels obsessive, it feels hard, it feels challenging. And my mentality with this, and I had those same things. I'm like, this is just going to take me way too much time. I don't understand. And I was so against it for the longest time. And it wasn't until I fully started tracking that the awareness that came obviously with how much food I was truly consuming, right? Like that's the education piece of it, which is huge. But I always look at it and I'm like, you look at this as restrictive, but I look at this as freedom. I'm like, because you're looking at this as like, oh, I have to track every tiny little thing that goes in my mouth. And I'm like, I look at this as, well, that tracking allows me to eat the donut if I want to eat the donut. That tracking allows me and still achieve my goals, right? Like it's not a this or
Mhm.
that. I get to eat the donut, and I'm not advocating for you to eat a donut every day or whatever it is that it is for you, but that tracking allows me to do that. So while you cut the donut out because the donut's bad, right? And whatever restrictive approach that you're following, but yet it's so funny to me because, and again, slightly squirrel here, but we look at things like keto and Whole30 and Weight Watchers and all of those things because necessarily they're putting you within a restrictive box of parameters that you have to follow. Keto, you can't have carbs. Fasting, you can only eat within, X window to X time frame. And
Mhm.
that's not obsessive, but yet understanding your actual caloric intake to tracking becomes obsessive. And so it's a disconnect there for me. And I'm like, well, truly though, that tracking is what's going to lead to that freedom. It's the discipline that gives you the freedom to, be able to enjoy the things that you love still and achieve the body composition that you're after.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really do believe that when we can take the emotional weight out of just the information, when it doesn't mean that we failed, that we're
Mm-hmm.
good or bad, it doesn't mean that you're stopping a conversation in the middle of dinner because you have to track what you ate. You get much, much better at being able to kind of conceptually understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that I no longer, I used to talk about this all the time. I was like, I'll always measure peanut butter. I don't have to do it anymore because I understand what it looks like now when
Yep.
it went like a certain amount, right? I used to measure, fruit and everything because I didn't understand what it needed to look like. And now I understand it. And now I can kind of like eyeball it and go, that looks about 30 grams. That looks about 75 grams.
Yep.
And you get a feel for how it feels in your body too. So it doesn't have to be obsessive. It can simply be a part of that rhythm, a part of your day, and actually one of the best ways of cultivating less anxiety. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of strategies for managing fitness and food goals with ADHD is that we have to actually create some routine in our life. But hang on, I just missed the point. Oh, God. I hate it when my ADHD plays with me like this, especially on a
Speaking of,
podcast.
right? Like speaking of that ADHD.
That's right. That's right. Um, creating rhythm and routine. Some of what we do is that 1%. So having a process for how we evaluate information. This goes back into the data collecting. But if we have a process, so every week I take a look at what goals I have for the week, and it could be one or two big things that I want to accomplish by week's end. And if at the beginning of the week I started and at the end of the week I acknowledge it, or like I'll do mine Monday through Friday. And on Friday, if I haven't achieved it, then I'm like, okay, I've got the weekend, and that's my only wiggle room is the weekend. And one of the cool parts about doing that is that when we develop that process for how we evaluate information, the process itself will override the end goal. In
Mm,
other words, we will get to the end goal because we're committing to the process itself eventually.
yeah.
And so everything else that we do that doesn't hit the process goals is information, and information just in terms of how am I going to tweak this? What happened that I didn't get this done? Oh, I don't really want to do it. Okay, great. Now I'm going to have to attach something to it that I really want to do, or I'm going to have to do it during a time that I know I will be sitting down. So now I'm going to get, like, as an example, I sing in our worship team. And so I'll bring like my laptop and my computer with me. To worship team on Sundays because I'm there for hours, and while I'm there, I will do stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I will be sitting, and that is what we do, right? And so, but that's one of the ways that we can actually monopolize our time, especially if we're doing things that we don't want to do. Planning out food, planning out meal plans, tracking information, also doing your goals for the week. We can all fit it in during times that we are sitting down. I know a client that I have that she had her kids in sports. I think she had some, like, one of her children was in soccer, another was in baseball, and then she had somebody that was in gymnastics. I have no idea how she made that all, but she spent a ton of time in the car and a ton of time sitting at practices. And so, and she would constantly say, I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to track. I don't have the time to meal plan. I don't have the time to even look at what I need to get for the next day. And I said, okay, how much time are you spending at these places? And she said, I don't know, like 20, 30 minutes. Great. Take 20 or 30 minutes. Take 5 minutes for all I care. Just do some amount of time. And she found that when she did that, she only needed about 5 or 10 minutes of
Yeah.
that time that she was spending. And she said, I don't even realize what I was doing beforehand because this was so easy to put in. And the same thing sometimes can be said for workouts if you don't have enough time, or getting in steps, right? If you don't have enough time, if you go to one of your kids' practices, and I've done that sometimes in the middle of winter, my kids are inside staying nice and warm, and I'm outside generally walking one of my little dogs in freezing cold temperatures with a big, huge parka. But I got it done because I was forced to get it done.
Yep.
And so cultivating some of those habits, some of those process related habits, finding the time instead of saying, I don't have the time, finding little nuggets of time instead of the perfect time. I need 30 minutes to get in the full walk. Okay, well, you've only got 15. Let's go for 15.
Yep. And if you're somebody like Anne, like you said, I'm the same exact way. I could eat the same thing typically I do eat the same thing for breakfast and lunch every single day. And I switch up my dinners based off of, because my husband isn't the same way. So I'll make dinners for, both of us. But it's like, if you do the same thing, you log it once and then you get to just copy and paste it. And it literally takes you, your whole week takes minutes to plan, right? If you're somebody who typically eats the same things over and over. And then if something were to come up, like Anne said, and it's like, okay, today this didn't happen the right way, it's already in there. And then we just tweak and make adjustments to, what I mean, which saves you a ton of time when it's already done. And so I tend to find for a lot of people, they look at things like tracking, meal planning, whatever the case may be, as we make it more overwhelming in our head than what it really is when we break it down. I get this a lot for people when they see like a step goal. They're like, you want me how many steps? I'm like, but if we break this down for you, I'm asking you to get a 20-minute walk in before you go to work, a 20-minute walk in after work, and then you break in maybe 2 10-minute walks during the day kind of thing. It really is. And I said, you're looking at this as one huge lump goal, which can be a big number. And whenever we give, like, we always give a plants goal. And so they look at it and they see 400 grams, 600 grams of plants. They're like, and I'm like, but if you break it down, it really isn't. Maybe, if you struggle to hit your fiber, that looks really, but when you break it down, it's really not as overwhelming. And it's like, how do you do the marathon 1 mile at a time kind of thing? But
Uh-huh.
you have to look at it that exact same way. Like when we break it down, it's not nearly as defeating as what we make it out to be in our mind and in our brain.
Absolutely. And I just want to say something else because ADHDers tend to be last minute folks. I also will encourage you to make a plan B with meal plans, with just
Mm.
about everything. But if you have backup freezer meals, I don't care if they're factory meals, I don't care if they're, I do a lot of leftovers where I put them in glass containers and put them in my freezer, and I like everything from sliced avocado to the sauces on it. It goes in the microwave. And then if I'm running last minute, I've got something already that I know is going to be nutritionally dense for me. So I'm not going to walk away hungry for more. I'm not going to have to go through fast food. Not that there's anything wrong with going through fast food. You can do that as well. It is just another option, right? And something that already kind of meets my goals for the day. And that is a really lovely way when we make the plan B and we have it on standby, that if you forgot to look at your schedule, if we've got boys in baseball right now. They keep having baseball games pop up because we keep having baseball games rained out, right? Like if there's a baseball game that pops up that evening, there's something for me to grab. I don't have to stress about the fact that I had this meal that I have to still cook or prepare or whatever. It's already done. And especially if we can manage the meal planning is huge. And planning and ADHD don't always go hand in hand. But if we can plan out ahead of the week what you're going to eat for dinner in particular, that tends to actually help with decision fatigue, which a lot of ADHDers will struggle with because we're making and we're thinking constantly. And so if you're able to kind of do that for yourself and give yourself that permission to plan out your week, even in little nuggets, you're going to feel so much more relieved. And also, it's not going to be so hard.
Well, I think I understand planning can feel very overwhelming. And when I start to slowly work a lot of clients into this, I'm like, okay, let's not look at every single meal. I just want you to
Yep.
give me 3 or 4 bulk protein sources, whether it
Yep.
be ground beef, smoked chicken, shrimp that's in the fridge, and that's all that you have planned. And then when it comes to the day to day, those big things, like most struggle with hitting their protein goal, most struggle with hitting their fiber goals, right? So let's make those big decisions and let's just eliminate them. They're done. And then like if you want to on the fly throw things together, cool, fire, love that. But this allows us to be prepared. So that's another great way of going about it. And I also love like what Anne said, we just actually today reordered, we have meal prep that we always have in our freezer from a meal prep company that we just have meals that fit within my macros and meals that fit within my husband's macros that are there just for the in cases, right? Like one day one of us doesn't feel good, something's happening, like things go off schedule, whatever the case may be. We have those to grab, more so because my husband works, I work from home, so he can grab those a little bit more conveniently if I like didn't prep dinner the night before for him, whatever the case may be. And then also having things, I love having like high protein options and like chomps. Love chomps for just
Yes.
high protein, like things that obviously are prepackaged. We limit them when, we don't rely on prepackaged, but, and, just random things that happen, kids' practices go too long, then those things are there and we're making better choices. And it's not necessarily that those things are planned, but they're just there and available for us when, you know what I mean, the last minute, whatever comes into play.
Nicole, I'm curious, when you work with clients, do you encourage them to plan out, like even cook up a whole bunch of protein on now that it's summer, right? But like grill out some protein, several pounds of protein during the weekend so that they have something available for them during the week? Have you ever used that strategy where you just say,
Oh, yeah.
just plan out the meat? Like
Yep. Oh,
you
yeah.
can, you can just have veggies in the freezer and heat those up, heat and go.
Yeah, because it's so versatile, right? You can make ground beef and you can do ground beef in so many tacos. You can put it in a bowl, you can throw it in a salad. And then it's not, you get something like you said, they struggle with the boredom, right? They want something new. And so if that's you, it's like, okay, let's have that protein source. And then let's turn that protein source into 4 or 5 different flavor profiles, which can easily be done. So when you cook the meat, it's very bland, but it's that way
Mm-hmm.
for a reason, because then we can add different sauces and different spices and flavorings to that actual meal. I actually love Lily Eats and Tells. I don't know if you follow her on Instagram. She's so good. She has quite a few
I will
cookbooks.
now.
So yeah, and she actually has a cookbook. It was like her first or second one that she released where she shows you how to batch bulk. And she's a macro tracker. So everything's very high protein and her food. Like I've never made something from her that is not just freaking fire and delicious, but she'll show you how to take one protein source, like a pork tenderloin, and she puts that pork tenderloin into 5 or 6 different meals throughout the week.
Oh,
And it
wow.
just makes things so, and so she'll batch bulk the protein source and different sauces. And those different sauces can go within the different meats that create different flavor profiles too, right? And so you can throw it into a pasta dish maybe one night. You can throw it in with some, sweet potatoes. And I love everything mixed together in a bowl. That's how I prefer to eat
Uh-huh.
anything, anyways. But if you're somebody who likes just more variety and things, like everyone's like, why don't you post more of your food? And I'm like, honestly, you guys, because it looks like it came out of a baby's bottom. Nothing about what I eat looks appealing. It tastes great. It just doesn't look appealing. So it's not very Instagram aesthetic, that's for sure. But that just eliminates the overwhelm, because what is the hardest part is the protein source. And it's always too, if you have a picky family too, it's just you can make different things with different flavor profiles, and it's already there, right? It's already there. Like last night, Matt had a salad and I ended up doing like a random bowl with like potatoes, but we both had the same protein source. He was just craving some pickled veggies and I had already had way above and beyond my fiber. My gut was saying no more vegetables tonight. So I threw it in with some like potatoes and stuff. But anyways, regardless, we both ate different meals somewhat, but we had the same things ish, right? But we can throw
Mhm.
in with our protein sources and we just mix and match. We do that often and just eliminates so much of the overwhelm.
Yes. Breaking down the barriers. That's what I just
Yep.
heard you say. Like
Yep,
any
exactly.
barrier that you have to doing, especially if you have ADHD, any barrier that you have to creating rhythm and routine, figuring out some big thing, weekend cooking up protein, batch making protein. And I believe that when I started, and a lot of times what I will work with clients on as well is starting to even only meal plan 3 days a week, right? Like that's all
Mhm.
they have the limit for, but make enough that you have double portions so that you can have them for leftovers during the other week. And they're like, okay, I can do that. And once we get into this rhythm, guys, okay, it doesn't matter who you are or how much you struggle with ADHD. We are all creatures of habit. We all love rhythm, even ADHD. So once we get into that rhythm and that routine with how to get things done, we can actually gain momentum and do more and be more creative and have different variety in foods. But initially, just starting, going with something really small, starting with something that's really simple that you're like, okay, well, I can do 2 meals or I can do 3 meals. That's all I've got to do. That's all I can do. Fantastic.
And I think
That
the KISS
works.
method too is the keep it stupid simple is crucial here. I see what women try to do where they get so overwhelmed, specifically with tracking in general, is when you're trying to make a meal that has 18 different ingredients and you're trying to track all 18 different ingredients, that becomes overwhelming, even for an experienced tracker like myself. I don't want to sit down and do that, you guys. So the easier that you can make things, but because I think what people think is because it's easy, it's not flavorful. And that's just not necessarily the case, right? Like the way that you season things and things can come together really well and still taste freaking delicious, but you're saving yourself so much time and headache. And so when we work with clients and they're brand new to tracking, we we take that off the table. It's like, it's not that you can't have a pasta dish with 18 different ingredients, but that's going to become just cumbersome and you're going to have walls that get built up around it. So let's just, for right now, develop the basics when it comes to tracking. And then you start to get skill sets that allow you to make meals that have multiple different ingredients. And then you get to a place where you can like weigh them all out with one pot and you weigh out the grams and it does all the calculation for you. But that is really overwhelming when you don't have the basics of tracking just mastered, right? So let's get really good at just tracking those basics. And I guess I know you said earlier in the podcast you like boredom, and it's like it's not necessarily boredom for me as much as I've become comfortable and okay with doing the same things because it is,
Routine.
yeah, it's routine, but it's eliminated the
Yes.
stress. I know it's eliminated the stress for me. And so
Yes.
I have become really comfortable with doing the same things over and over again. But I've also allowed myself, because when I first started, I looked at food, I had FOMO when it came to food. Like I always had this fear of missing out on something really delicious. And like I just wanted everything. And now that I look at food and it's like, I've accepted the fact and I'm okay with the fact that why I eat a lot of really, 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 really delicious food and there's no restriction within my diet. A lot of my food is very boring and basic because I enjoy it that way. It's just easy, it's simple, and it's efficient for me. And so some meals look like prepped chicken that's cold. Like my husband smokes the best chicken. It's so fire. It does not go dry, but I can take a cold breast and just slice it up, throw some blueberries and maybe some veggies and some avocado, like, and that can be on the go for me. And I'm okay with that. Right. And some people look at it and they're like, really, you're eating cold chicken? And I'm like, not every single meal is going to be this, gourmet experience.
Mm.
And I think allowing yourself to become okay with that. Because for a while I looked at food as it had to be elaborate. I don't know why my mentality was wrapped, but it was. And when you can take kind of that overwhelm of just the elaborate and the multiple different ingredients, and we can just tear it and I guess, take it down to the fundamentals and to the basics. Not to say we don't get back to places where we can make those meals and then you prep them and then you have them and all the macros are already calculated and that makes things much easier. But when we take it back to the basics from first, I mean, just makes everything so much easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, we start small, start small.
Right.
And I think this is certainly a part of a lot of high performance authors, a lot of motivational speakers. But if you are starting small, 1%, what is your 1%? What's the one thing that you want to work on this week, right? If you do that every single week at the end of the year, you will have achieved so much.
Yes.
Um, and that is the way that we can make things work, even with the ADHD brain.
Yep. Because what is it? That 1% better mentality every day, 1% every day is 7% a week, which is 28% a month, which is, I don't know, and do the math. I'm awful. What is that over the course of a
No,
year?
don't ask me the math. Don't ask me the math on a
I'm like,
podcast.
that was pretty basic until I went to go for the year analogy. And I was like, oh, I'm going to butcher that one. So whoever
Yes,
wants to do the math, but point being is it stacks and it stacks quickly. And so just like atomic habits and habit stacking and all of those things, it truly does start to snowball. But yeah,
good stuff.
it
Good
has been,
stuff.
yeah, this has been anything else to, I think, great place to end
No,
on.
I think we
Anything else
covered
you want
it.
to add? Yeah. So this has been great. Thank you for diagnosing me on this podcast. This has been fire. I don't think I've ever identified as somebody with ADHD ever until now.
Miracle. I thought you knew.
No, I thought you knew that. She's like, I pegged you. I've known you for a while. I've known that. How did you not know? No, I've
Guys,
always like, I don't.
that isn't how it formally gets diagnosed. Just to the side.
That's
There
so
are
funny.
some unique traits with folks with ADHD, and we do tend to be a little bit quirky.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I think I've always looked at ADHD and you look at somebody like somebody who can't necessarily focus, right? And when I want to focus, I can focus. I just, you've
Yep.
never breaking it down in a way like that where I'm like, okay, yep, that's me. That's me. Yeah, that's me too. So I'm sure everybody listening to this has resonated at some, like with some piece of this. So this has been really helpful. And you guys, as always, if you find any value, a 5-star rating is always appreciated. Liking and sharing to your social media accounts, tagging us. We absolutely love the love, but we will see you guys in the next episode.